Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala. Om Bhurabhuvah Swaha Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Nah Prachodayat. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namaste, dear friends. Now I am giving this second video on Arunachala Aksharamanamalai, starting with verse number 26. It says, O Arunachala, O hill of grace, praised by Gautama, save me by directing thy gracious glance towards me. According to the Puranas, Parvati once playfully closed the three eyes of her Lord Shiva with her hands. Although this was only for a moment, it was a long period measured by our time. For this period, darkness enveloped the world and all life became extinct. In order to atone for her act, Parvati had to be born in this world, and having been born, she did tapas and offered worship to the Lord at Kanchipuram. Here she heard the voice of God directing her to proceed to Tiruvannamalai and learn from sage Gautama, who had his hermitage there, the discipline that would lead to her reunion with Shiva. Parvati did as she was told and eventually gained identity with one half of the body of Shiva. The reference in the present verse is to this story. Gautama praised the Lord, having realized his true nature. Parvati heard this praise, her devotion became intense, and she merged with her Lord. The devotee soul prays that she too should receive God's grace and be saved. Tiruchoji, the place where Bhagwan Ramana was born, is also said to be presided over by sage Gautama. Verse number 27. O Arunachala, the bright sun that dost swallow up all the universe by thy rays, do open the lotus of my heart. The word Arunachala itself means the hill of light, the dawn mountain. Arunachala is the light of lights, the son of suns. He is the self-luminous intelligence that is the ground of all existence. All shine after him, pervaded by his rays of light. The world becomes meaningful and achieves its fulfillment. The devotee soul appealed to the Son of Suns to shine in her heart lotus so that it may open and gain its purpose. The state of bondage is compared to the state of the lotus bud. Bondage is described as the note of the heart, Hridaya Granthi. To make the heart lotus open, the sun of wisdom should rise. When wisdom dawns, the heart blooms, breaking the bonds that had hitherto bound it. The same idea is expressed by Sri Bhagwan in the first verse of the Arunachala Pancharatnam, verse number 28. O Arunachala, resorting to the thinking that thou art my food, I have become thy food, may I now become quiescent. One ordinarily believes in God for pragmatic reasons. Much of conventional religion makes of God an agent for distributing earthly favors. The devotee approaches God for the satisfaction of selfish ends. For instance, when one is in dire distress, one thinks of God. This is much better than not to think of God at all, even though one may start one's relations with God on a commercial basis. One finds that as one becomes intimate with God, all finite ends cease to have value. As devotion matures, one no longer loves God for this or that gift. One realizes that God is all and nothing else is real. One, in short, gets consumed in God. What is the resultant gain? Quiescence, peace, santam. The word santam may mean also with and. The meaning would then be one's individuality or ego finds destruction in God. Verse number 29. O Arunachala, moon of grace, make my mind cool with thy radiant hands and open the ambrosial orifice. In verse 27, Arunachala was compared to the sun that makes the lotus blossom. Here the comparison is with the moon that opens the lily bud. God is the moon of grace that cools the mind parched up with the burning passions. He it is that can open the heart lily and make it brim with ambrosia of divine bliss. Verse number 30. O Arunachala, destroy my clothes and stripping me naked, give me the clothing of grace. The true nature of the soul is obscured because of the trappings that enclose her five seats, kosa made of nescience, avidya cover her, anna में physical body, prana में vital air, mano में mind, Vijnanmaya intellect and Anandmaya pseudo bliss. Identifying herself with these, the soul goes through empirical life utterly oblivious of her true nature as the pure self. These have to be discarded and the soul should be reclaimed. The devotee soul prays to Arunachala to disrobe her and give her the clothing of his grace. Verse number 31. O Arunachala, be quiet, resting there in my heart, so that the sea of happiness may surge and speech and thoughts cease. God is implored here to take his residence in the devotee's heart. He may remain there quietly without doing anything. His mere presence will fill the soul with happiness. There will be an inundation of joy and all speech and thoughts will cease. The Taittiriya Upanishad describes Brahma as that whose body is space, whose nature is truth, whose delight is life, whose mind is bliss, and as that which is the fullness of peace and is eternal. It is also stated in the Upanishad that Brahma is that whence words and the mind return, not being able to reach it, and that he who knows the bliss of Brahma, fears not at any time. Verse number 32. O Arunachala, without deceiving me and testing me anymore, show me thy luminous form. God is the will, wielder of Maya, the power of illusion. It is as governed by this power that the soul moves in the tract of transmigration. The Bhagavad Gita says, God resides in the heart of every being and by his Maya wills them all as though set on a machine. In him alone seek refuge with all thy heart. By his grace will you attain the eternal state of supreme peace. This is chapter 18, verse 61 to 62. Thus, the soul that is deluded by Maya can be saved only by his grace. The devotee soul that pants for divine grace appeals to the Lord to reveal his luminous form, the form that he showed to Brahma and Vishnu, which even they were unable to measure or fathom. If even the celestials failed, how can the poor terres- terrestrial terrestrial soul succeed in passing the test? So let not the Lord try her and find her wanting. His duty is simple and clear. He must save the devotee soul by appearing before her as the self-luminous light. Verse number 33. O Arunachala, reveal the science of perfection so that I may cease from deluding the world through learning the art of jugglery. The power of Maya is marvelous. It makes apparently possible what is in truth impossible. So it is that Maya is compared to magic. Within this cosmic magic, so many minor feats of magic are performed by ingenious men. He deludes himself as well as others. Believing that the world of plurality is real, he manipulates it and imagines that he has the power to work wonders. Not being satisfied with the miracles of science and empirical life, he sometimes seeks supernatural powers, siddhis, but no lasting good is to be gained by all such methods which only draw the soul away from her goal and drag her into delusion all the more. So the devotee here asks Arunachala to impart to her the knowledge of that technique which will make her perfect. This is the higher knowledge, pravidya, by means of which the Supreme Self is realized. Verse number 34. O Arunachala, if thou dost not join me, my body will melt away, my eyes shed tears profusely, and I shall be destroyed. The devotee soul who has chosen Arunachala as her Lord pines for him. If he will not respond, life will become insipid for her and will not be worth living. In the world, people are prepared to die for worthless things such as wealth and fame. Who dies for God? The devotee's love of God is more intense than that of the worldling for the things of the world. Naturally, she feels that she must either get wedded to her Lord or perish. Of what use is the body if it does not serve as the locus of spiritual aspiration and progress? To live in a perpetual disconsolate state is worse than not to live. The devotee soul gives expression to her inner wretched condition caused by the delay in the Lord's response to her loving appeal and cries out that she is sure to be destroyed through emaciation and grief if the Lord did not come and save her in time. Verse 35. O Arunachala, if thou dost spurn me and reject me, my prarabdha will burn me. How then can I be saved? Please tell me. How can the Lord reject the appeal for succor made by the devotee soul? If he rejects, what is to happen to her? The alternative is dreadful even to think of. There would be certain destruction for her. Destruction need not come from any source outside. Her own prarabdha would torment her. Prarabdha is that portion of the unspent deeds of the past that is responsible for the present birth. If God, whose mercy is abundant, does not come and save the soul, what is to be blamed except Prarabdha? But can Prarabdha offset the flow of God's grace in the case of Markandeya? Did the Lord not ward off death itself and thus alter the so-called unalterable fate? There is nothing impossible for the Lord. He can offer no excuses. If he will not save the soul, who will save her? Verse number 36. O Arunachala, saying without saying, stay without speech, thou didst stay quiet. In the previous verse, the devotee soul implored the Lord with these words, how can I be saved? Please tell me here. The answer is revealed to her in silence. The devotee gives expression to this in the present verse. Silence, not speech, is the means to get saved. Although speech and thought are required up to stage, beyond that they are of no use. The supreme reality is beyond the realm of speech and thought. No word and no concept are adequate to express it. So the real teaching about it is in silence. The Lord as Dakshinamurti adopts silence as the mode of communication with his disciples. Monapadesa was the characteristic method of Bhagwan Ramana's teaching. There is not much point in the Guru imploring the Shishya to keep silent. The message of silence cannot be effectively imparted in speech. Hence, what the Guru does is to say without saying. That is, he shows by example the efficacy of silence. He makes silence eloquent. He remains quiet not simply by not opening his mouth, but quiet in the deeper sense of the term, transcending all sense of duality. When there is duality, there will be speech, if not vocal, mental. The supreme teaching is that there is no duality, that is true silence. Verse number 37. O Arunachala, without doing anything, remaining quiet, if I enjoy happiness and sleep, which is the way other than which is the way other than this? Please tell me. The Lord Himself has shown the way to perfection. It is silence which is freedom from the sense of duality. Where there is duality, there is disquiet, there is suffering. In the states of waking and dream, where there is duality, one suffers even when there is apparent enjoyment. In deep sleep, there is no duality, hence no suffering. The experience of unmixed happiness in sleep is evidenced by the fact that the one who gets up from sleep says, I slept happily. I did not know anything. This does not mean, however, that the ideal state for one is to go to sleep. Sloth and slumber are not the characteristics of the native state of the self. Sleep is not sakshatkara. It is true that in sleep there is no duality and no misery, but there is still in that state the root of all misery, viz. Ignorance. In order to distinguish the true transcendent state of the self from its three empirical states of waking, dream, and sleep, it is designated as Turiya, the fourth. The Turiya, however, is not the fourth in addition to or succeeding the three states. It indicates the eternal and basic nature of the self. Giving an account of the Turiya, Gaudapada declares, in the Turiya there is no trace of ignorance. It is the light of intelligence that never fails. In it there is neither dream nor non-knowledge. It is pure consciousness, which is the non-dual and self-luminous reality. The Turiya is the supreme goal. It is described as waking sleep, Jagrat Susupti, or sleeping without sleeping, Tungamal Tunguvadu. Bhagwan Ramana teaches in this stanza that to realize the Turiya should be the objective of the devotee soul. Another meaning of this stanza is if I sleep away in torpor and the bliss of ignorance, what means of salvation is there for me? Verse number 38. O Arunachala, thou didst show thy prowess, and as ignorance was destroyed, thou hast remained without moving. The prowess of Arunachala lies in his nature as the self-effulgent son of knowledge. In his presence there cannot be the darkness of ignorance. When he rises in our hearts, the ignorance located there is dispelled. Just as there is no real rising or setting of the sun and only we turn towards or away from it, there is no moment for the Supreme Spirit. We imagine that He is away from us or comes into us. But when we realize that He is Arunachala, the hill of light that never moves, we get rid of the blinding darkness of delusion. Verse number 39. O Arunachala, by what strength can I, who am worse than a dog, approach thee and attain thee? The devotee soul realizes her smallness and helplessness in the glorious presence of Arunachala, her Lord. She deprecates herself by saying that she is worse than a dog. What right has a dog to demand entrance into a holy place? How can the soul by her own effort reach the feet of the Lord? Even to be able to worship His feet, His grace is necessary. All that the soul can and should do is to resign herself to the Lord's care. The Lord cannot escape saying to the soul, "You are unfit, get away." It is His duty to make the soul fit and accept her. An alternative meaning of the stanza is this: O Arunachala, am I worse than a dog? I shall, through persistent effort, seek thee and attain thee. Just as a dog, separated from its master, will put forth an untiring endeavor with the help of scent and track him down, so also the devotee soul will not rest till she joins her Lord. The who am I enquiry will be the means whereby she will arrive at the goal. Verse number 40. O Arunachala, in order that the weariness born of love for thee without knowledge may go, please grant me knowledge. I will repeat it. O Arunachala, in order that the weariness born of love for thee without knowledge may go, please grant me knowledge. Love for God is good, but love without knowledge will only end in weariness of the soul. One may begin loving God even with wrong notions about His nature, but one will not realize the goal without true knowledge of God, since the darkness of ignorance is what binds the soul. It is only the light of knowledge that will remove this bondage. To imagine that God is far away or that He is different from our true self is not to understand what God is. When one acquires the liberating knowledge, one realizes the non-dual spirit. In the Panchadasi, there is a simile which explains how weariness is caused by ignorance. Two travelers have come very near the destination. One of them knows that the destination is near and the other does not know. The former is happy while the latter is depressed. Ignorance thus causes weariness. Arunachala is our very self. It is the realization of this truth that will free us from sorrow. The devotee soul implores the Lord in this stanza to grant her divine knowledge. Sri Krishna gave Arjuna the divine eye in order that he may behold the all form which is the true form of the Lord. He declared that he discloses the way of knowledge to his devotees so that they may reach him. Out of compassion for them, says the Lord, I who am their self destroys the darkness born of ignorance by the blazing lamp of knowledge. Verse number 41. O Arunachala, the son of wisdom, how is it that thou too, like a bee, stayest before me without opening me and entering into me, saying, you have not blossomed? At sunrise, the lotus blossoms, the bee enters it to drink the honey. The bee will hover about without entering if the lotus remains unopened. Arunachala is not helpless like a bee. He is the son of wisdom, possessing the power to make the heart lotus of the devotee blossom forth. The devotee soul tells the Lord that she will not accept his excuse that her heart was not opened. To make the heart mature is not beyond his power. How could he behave like a bee while he is the sun? Verse number 42. O Arunachala, thou sayest thus without knowing the truth or without hearing the text that thou art. You have attained that. This is the truth. The devotee soul praises here the grace of the Lord which has enabled her to realize the truth without any formal instruction. The truth of non-difference, the truth that is taught in the Mahavakya, thou that thou art, Tat Tvam Asi, has come to her as a gift, and she asks the Lord Himself to proclaim this is to the world. Advaita Anubhava, the experience of non-duality cannot come to one without the grace of God. Even the taste for Advaita Vasana has to arise in one out of God's grace alone. Isvara Anugraha Eva. The devotee soul rejoices at the fact that she has been granted the vision of truth by God out of His abundant love. Verse number 43. O Arunachala, show thou thyself this truth that thou art the self of love. The Lord reveals His true nature as the self of all. The self is the basic reality, and that is God. Limited identifications of God with this or that form do not constitute the final truth. They are intended only for those who cannot grasp the all form of the Lord. In the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, where Sri Krishna enumerates for the benefit of Arjuna the various manifestations of his splendor, Vibhuti, in the best of each species of being, he makes it clear that in truth he is the self seated in the heart of all beings. Then he reveals his all form, Visvasvarupa, that the self is the basic reality may be understood, says the Panchadasi, even by an analysis of ordinary empirical usage. We say, for instance, Devdatta himself goes, you yourself see, I myself am not well, etc. Here selfhood is. Sattva is common and constant, while the persons with first, second, and third vary. It is this constant and abiding self that is God. Verse number 44. O Arunachala, thou toughest thus, turn the ego within and look constantly with the inner eye, and you will see. Having indicated the nature of the ultimate truth, the way to realizing it is taught here. This teaching too comes from the Lord Himself. The way to realization lies through self-inquiry. One has to turn away from the external objects towards which the ego ordinarily flows through the sense channels and direct the attention within. This is not exactly what is meant by introversion in psychology. It means the turning of the mind toward the source of its own light, which is the self. This is true inwardness. When the attitude or inwardness becomes constant, the truth is revealed. The truth is that the Son, that is God, is the sole reality, the self-luminous pure awareness. Verse number 45. O Arunachala, seeking thee in the limitless heart, I have regained thee, hail by grace. The Lord has now taught that he is the self residing in the heart of all beings, and that self inquiry is the way to reach him. The devotee soul here declares that she has sought him and found him following the direction given. The search is inward search. The heart, which is the location of the Lord, is not the physical heart but the spiritual heart, the limitless heart ether, Dharaksa, Dharaksa. It is here that he is realized. He is ever there, but the soul is unaware of his presence because of ignorance. When, as a result of the inward search, the ignorance is destroyed, she discovers him as her own inmost self. This is regaining what was never really lost, discovering the eternal truth. If the expression pyramid limitless is read as Dhiramil without courage or strength, the meaning of the verse would be I have searched for thee within the heart without the requisite strength, and so I have come back to thee. Being defeated in my attempt, please be gracious to me. Verse number 46. O Arunachala, of what use is this birth without knowledge, born through inquiry, and why should I compare it to anything? To be born as a human being is rare. Of all the species of living beings, man has a privileged position. Among living beings, says Shankara in the Vivek Chudamani, human birth is difficult to obtain. Jantunam nara janma durlabham. Human birth is even more precious than the status of the gods, for while one may enjoy heavenly pleasure as a god on account of one's past meritorious deeds, one must be born again as a human being for acquiring fresh merit or for endeavoring to gain perfection. Man is particularly gifted with the ability to discriminate and inquire into the truth. And since inquiry is the direct means to perfection, moksha, human birth is most precious. Having been born as a human being, one should not waste one's time and energy in pursuits that do not result in release from bondage. If one knows here, then there is truth, declares the Kena Upanishad. If one does not know here, there is great destruction. Even while in this body, it is said, knowledge should be gained. Otherwise, when the body is given up, Brahma would become very distant indeed. Having been born as a human being, if one does not strive to gain self-knowledge, it is a great tragedy. Wasting precious human life in futile pursuits is like boiling oil cakes in a vessel made of emerald on fire, fed by sandalwood as fuel, or like growing weeds in a farm which has been plowed with a plowshare made of gold, or like cultivating maize by using camphor as manure. So far as creaturely pursuits are concerned, there is no distinction between man and beast. The latter too eats, sleeps, and multiplies. The only distinction that man possesses is that he can know the truth. If he does not benefit by this special gift, his condition becomes more pitiable than that of the animals. Therefore, Bhagwan says, in the present verse that such a futile life cannot be compared to anything, not even say to the life of a dog. Verse number 47. O Arunachala, be gracious so that I may sink in thy true form, wherein sink those whose mind and speech are pure. Union with God is not possible for those who are impure in mind, speech, and body. Purity of heart is essential for those who seek to enter into the precincts of precin- mm, precincts of divine, though the path of God works through dedicated service. Karma Yoga. One should have the mind and heart cleansed. It is desire or passion that makes the mind impure. Inertia, tamas, and passionate activity, rajas, prevent the mind from reflecting the self. So, the aspirant should free the mind from these defects and make it function in a disinterested and unattached manner. In other words, all selfish motives should be removed and sattva should become the dominant nature of the mind. Even devotion to God should become unselfish. One has to dedicate action as well as the fruit thereof to God. As the Bhagavad Gita declares, by worshipping God through one's allotted work, one gains fulfillment. The saints are those who sink their equity in the divine. They are santas, the holy man. Nayamars, Nanamars, spiritual leaders. Alwards, those who are immersed in God love. In the present verse, the devotee soul prays to Arunachala that by his grace and following the example of the saints, she should lose herself in him. Tayamana Mojiyar. This phrase should also mean those who have attained the state of mindlessness through purifying the mind. Verse number 48. O Arunachala, I sought refuge in thee as my God, and thou didst, did, didst destroy me utterly. The devotee should approach The devotee soul approaches God with the assumption that God is the other. But as the devotion matures, the distance between the soul and the God gets progressively reduced, and when there is complete self-surrender on the part of the soul discovers the eternal state of non-difference. Thus, Advaita experience is the goal of even bhakti. Devotion will not find its fulfillment until the ego is destroyed without residue. It is the self loss in God that constitutes the truest self gain. When the devotee soul gives herself up to God, what she receives in return is annihilation of the ego. Arunachala is Hara, the destroyer of all that is limited and divisive. Verse number 49. O Arunachala, thou art the treasure of grace that has come to me without seeking to remove my inner poverty consisting of delusion of the mind. Here is a reference to Bhagwan's own experience of the grace of Arunachala without any special effort on his part. The very mention of the name Arunachala quite early in life by a relative of his had fascinated him profoundly. After arriving at Tiruvannamalai as a lad of 17, he never felt any inclination to leave the place. Arunachala was all for him. Arunachala and he were not different. In the present verse, Bhagwan makes the devotee soul think of the infinite grace of the Lord that had drawn her irresistibly to him. The Lord is the true wealth. This wealth alone can remove the inner poverty of the soul. Material wealth can only add to our troubles, it cannot give us peace. Hence, Sankara asks us to consider wealth to be evil. Artham, anartham, bhavya, nityam. The only value and the highest value for the devotee is the grace of God. Having attained it, she longs for nothing else. The second line of the verse may also mean cure the fretful wandering of my mind. Verse number 50. O Arunachala, with courage I sought to know thy reality, but alas, I got destroyed in the process. Do bestow thy grace on me. Without God's grace, it is not possible to know Him truly. No amount of effort on the part of the devotee soul will be able to discover God's nature. It is God that should reveal Himself. If one ventures on a voyage of the uncharted sea without guidance, one is sure to suffer shipwreck. So the devotee realizes her initial mistake and appeals to God for help. The sad dog profoundly walked into the sea, boasting that he could measure its depth. But what happened was that he lost his identity and became one with the sea. The ego cannot size up God. Any such effort will end only in the dissolution of the ego. Until this happens, God cannot be grasped. Verse 51. O Arunachala, unless thou dost touch me with thy gracious hand and embrace me, I shall be lost. Do bestow thy grace on me. One of the modes in which a preceptor initiates his pupil is through touch. Sparsdiksha. The devotee soul invites the Lord here to apply to her this particular mode of initiation. The touch of the Lord's hand is the touch of His grace. This is the beginning of a process whose end is the experience of non-difference. In the language of bridal mysticism, this experience is described as embrace. The devotee's craving for God is so intense that she is sure that would perish if God does not respond. She pleads with him not to neglect or ignore her. To whom could she turn if he would not come to her rescue? Res- mm, Verse number 52. O Arunachala, thou who art undefiled, do bestow thy grace on me so that I may always be happy, gaining union with thee. God is the sole undefiled reality. Defilements are caused by nescience, equity, and their brood. God is untouched by any of these. Patanjali in his Yoga Sutra declares that God is untouched by hindrances or deeds or fruition or by latent deposits. The Upanishads say that the impurities of the world do not affect its source, even as the defilements that are noticed in the sky do not belong to either ether. God is eternally pure, awakened, and released. Nitya Shuddha Buddha Mukta Swabhava. Hence, the devotee soul addresses God here as the undefiled. It is the ever pure God alone that can save the soul by bestowing His grace on her. What is the effect of the bestowal of grace? It is the gaining of union with God. This is true happiness for the devotee soul. This is called true happiness because it is unmixed with misery and is eternal. It is everlasting, unexcelled happiness, Nitya Niratishya Ananda. Realizing this happiness is the goal of bridal mysticism. O Arunachala, there is no room for mocking at me. I have sought thee, adorn me with the ornament of thy grace. God should not reject the soul thinking that she is plain looking, unadorned, ill placed, etc. It is the worldly suitors that will look for embellishments in the bride. The mother of the groom may want money, the father noble conduct, and the groom good looks. But such considerations cannot weigh with God. He has no parents. He is the supreme self-existent Lord. If the devotee soul is unadorned, who is to blame? Who should adorn her? And what is the adornment? It is God that should embellish her with the ornament of the highest price, with His grace. When grace envelops the soul, she would become a beauty without power, fit to be accepted by the Lord. Let the Lord look at her with the eye of grace. Let the Lord look at her with the eye of grace. He would then detect in her no blemish. All that God has to do is to become the soul's beloved. Once the soul becomes the object of God's love, all her defects will vanish. Verse number 54. O Arunachala, when of my own accord I sought thee in order to become one with thee, thou didst stand like a pillar without shame. In the language of bridal mysticism, this is love quarrel. The soul quarrels with her Lord for not responding to her appeals. Relinquishing her natural sense of modesty, she approaches her Lord asking to be accepted. But she finds no response. The Lord stands unmoving like a pillar. Hence, she administers a rebuke to him so that he may relent and respond. The inner meaning of this verse is this: the Lord Arunachala is not other than the seeking soul. There is no difference between the seeker and the sought. The soul, on account of delusion, imagines that the Lord is the other and should be gained. When her inquiry yields its fruits, she discovers that he had all along been the inner reality or herself. He is unmoving, Achala, because there is no place where he is not. He is all pervading, full. The Atharva Veda calls him Sakambha, the sport. According to a Puranic legend, Arunachala is the form of Shiva as a pillar of light whose top and bottom ends Brahma and Vishnu were unable to discover. Verse number 55. O Arunachala, ere thy fire burn me to ashes, do send a downpour of thy grace. Here may be seen the relation between the devotion, bhakti, and knowledge, jnana. The ultimate reality, Brahma or Arunachala, is of the nature of knowledge. It is knowledge of Brahma that burns away all karma with its cause, which is nescience. The sacred ash is a symbol of the result of the burning away of all dross. The equity, which is a product of nescience, is completely destroyed when the sun of wisdom rises. It gets reduced to ashes in the form of fire of knowledge. The ego must, however, be rendered fit to receive the burning. It should get drenched in the rain of grace. Devotion accomplishes this preparatory task. The path of knowledge becomes easy to tread for the devotee who has received the grace of God. Verse number 56. O Arunachala, embrace me closely so that thou I thought distinction will cease, and grant me the states of eternal joy. The culmination of bridal mysticism is the realization of non-duality. The true devotee does not desire to preserve her individuality insulated as it were against God's being. The consciousness of the I, though difference will persist only up to a point. When divine love matures, no trace of difference is left. God's embrace ends in destroying the ego. It is only when the sense of difference is totally overcome that true and eternal happiness is realized. Staying in one's real self, so swasatha, is happiness. One's real self is God. Brahma is bliss. The infinite alone is happiness. As long as a sense of difference persists, there can be no happiness. Verse 57. O Arunachala, when will my thought waves cease so that I may unite with thy subtle being in the heart ether? It is in the heart center that the supreme reality shines self-luminously as I. Realization of this truth is described as union with God. This is the most subtle truth, and it cannot be realized so long as the mind streams out through the sense organs and gets disturbed and dissipated. Mind is the name for the collection of functions such as thoughts, emotions, etc. These functions are compared to waves because of their violent movements. They come in quick succession with great fury and noise. It is only when these are subdued that in the stillness of our heart the supreme truth of non duality is realized. Be still and know I am God. Verse number 58. O Arunachala, bestow thy grace on me, who am I a fool without even the knowledge of scriptures, by destroying my delusion. The knowledge of scriptures may yield a theoretical understanding of the truth, but this by itself is not liberation. It is the intuitive insight that constitutes release, and this cannot be had except through divine grace. The implication here is not that scriptural knowledge is of no value or that it is not to be sought after. The meaning is that mere verbal knowledge of scripture is not enough. In certain rare cases, as in the case of Bhagwan Ramana, self-realization may come even without formal study. What is essential, however, is that God should shower His grace on the devotee soul. It is for this grace that she prays in the present verse. Nescience is destroyed through grace. Grace is the same as the highest knowledge, which reveals the immutable, non-dual reality. Sri Krishna declares in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 10, verse 8 to 20, I am the source of all. From me everything proceeds. Knowing thus, the wise worship me with intense devotion, with their mind fixed on me, with their lives dedicated to me, enlightening one another by speaking about me. They ever remain contented and take delight in me. On those that are ever united with me through meditation and worship me out of love, I confirm the yoga of wisdom through which they attain me. Verse number 59. O Arunachala, melting with intense devotion, when I entered thee as my refuge, thou didst stand naked. The end of self surrender is the same as that of self knowledge. It is the false self, the ego, that has to be destroyed, that has to melt away. The true self Brahma is realized when the science has been removed. The dissolution of the ego in devotion, its self loss in God, the soul refuse results in self realization. The devotee starts with the assumption that God is the other, that God has a transcendent form, etc. That is because the devotee soul imagines that she herself has distinct individuality. But as devotion matures and ends in total self-surrender, it dawns on the devotee that there is no reality other than God. God is naked in the sense that He is not conditioned, that He is non-dual pure. All conditioning adjuncts are due to Maya. They are not real. They are illusory projections. When the veil of Maya has been lifted, the supreme reality stands revealed as the immaculate, unconditioned self. Verse 60. O Arunachala, having roused love for thee in me, who was without love, please do not deceive me. The soul does not become a devotee easily. Her natural inclination is towards sense objects. If she has to be rescued, God's grace is necessary. So the devotee soul addresses the Lord here and says, I was without love for you. The initiative did not come from me. You generated in me this divine hankering. If I hunger for you now, the responsibility is yours. Having aroused in me this new love, you should not desert me. If you do not accept me and satisfy my soul hunger, you will be guilty of practicing deceit. If man deceive, one may understand how can God be deceitful. This only shows the devotee soul's intense longing for the Lord and her impatience which will not brook delay. And the Lord's play of hide and seek is evidently designed to make the soul's longing all the more intense. So, my dear friends, I end the video here. Thank you for watching and listening this video. Please subscribe my channel